Within you lies an invincible summer, a stoic peace that no winter can diminish. Sadness is a universal experience. It weighs on the soul, dims the light in our eyes, and drags our thoughts into the depths of despair. Some sadness is momentary, fading like the setting sun, while other forms of sadness settle into the bones, becoming an unwanted companion on our journey. It seeps into our daily lives, influencing our thoughts, actions, and even our sense of identity. Many believe sadness is an unshakable fate, but the Stoics show us otherwise. But what if there was a way to rise above sadness, not just temporarily, but permanently? Not by denying it or suppressing it, but by confronting it, mastering it, and emerging stronger. What if sadness could be transformed into a guiding force that sharpens our wisdom instead of dulling our spirit? The Stoics, those ancient philosophers of resilience and wisdom, held the keys to overcoming sorrow. Their insights were not poetic musings, but sharp, practical tools designed to cut through suffering and bring the mind to a place of peace and strength. This journey will not be about empty positivity or feel-good platitudes. It will be about real transformation. You will learn how to wrestle with sorrow the way a warrior wrestles with an opponent, not to destroy it, but to control it. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm, rain pounding against your skin, yet feeling completely untouchable. This is the level of mastery we aim for, a state where sadness may exist, but it holds no power over you. You will understand sadness in a way you never have before. You will learn to strip away its illusions, to see it not as an enemy, but as an opportunity to cultivate inner strength. The goal is not to avoid sadness, but to wield it as a teacher, a guide that refines your soul. By the end of this journey, sadness will no longer be a weight dragging you down. It will be a stepping stone to wisdom, self-control, and an unshakable mind. This is your chance to rise high above sadness, now and forever. The journey starts now. Chapter 1. Understanding the nature of sadness. To rise above sadness, we must first understand what it truly is. The Stoics believed that emotions were not things that happen to us, but judgments we make about the world. Sadness is not an external force attacking us. It is an internal reaction to loss, disappointment, or suffering. We feel sad because we have assigned negative meaning to an event. The loss of a loved one, the failure of a dream, the betrayal of a friend, disappointment in results. These events in themselves do not contain sadness. Rather, sadness arises from how we perceive them. We lament, we dwell, we replay painful memories, all because we have convinced ourselves that this suffering defines our reality. Once we grasp this, we begin to understand that sadness is not inevitable. It is a choice, one that we can learn to control. But how? Through the lens of Stoic wisdom, we start by separating what is real from what is merely a mental construct. Is it true that loss diminishes us? Or is it possible that every loss is an invitation to a new kind of strength? Is failure truly an end, or can it be a catalyst for transformation? The Stoics teach us that reality is neither cruel nor kind. It simply is. Our suffering does not come from events, but from our unwillingness to accept them as they are. Imagine for a moment that your mind is a glass of water. When emotions such as sadness, fear, or disappointment arise, it is as if dirt is stirred into that water, making it cloudy and murky. Most people panic at the sight of this change, believing the water is permanently ruined. But the Stoics would tell us that the best course of action is to let the dirt settle, to remain still and composed rather than react impulsively. The more we resist the reality of our emotions, the more we stir the water and prolong our suffering. However, if we accept them, we allow clarity to return naturally. By shifting our perspective, sadness loses its grip. Instead of being trapped in the illusion that we are powerless victims, we awaken to the truth that we are always in control of our responses. Every situation presents a choice to react with distress or to respond with wisdom. When we understand this, sadness no longer feels like an external force attacking us, but rather a lesson waiting to be understood. We stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What can I learn from this?" With practice, we learn to master our interpretations, replacing sorrow with understanding and despair with resilience. Instead of resisting life's inevitable challenges, we meet them with a Stoic's gaze, calm, unwavering, and ready to extract meaning from every experience. But mastery is not achieved overnight. Like a sculptor chiseling away at a block of marble, we must continuously refine our thoughts, stripping away the unnecessary emotions that cloud our clarity. This process demands discipline. It requires us to step outside of ourselves, to observe our sadness not as something that defines us, but as something that arises and passes like the changing tides. We must learn to see emotions as transient, neither inherently good nor bad, simply experiences that we can shape to our advantage. It is not about eliminating sadness entirely. Such an endeavor would be futile. Instead, it is about transforming its nature, redirecting its energy toward growth, wisdom, and inner stability. Think of the great Stoic minds before us: Marcus Aurelius, who bore the weight of an empire yet did not allow his burdens to consume him; Seneca, who faced exile and betrayal yet found solace in philosophy; Epictetus, who endured a life of slavery and yet rose above it in mind and spirit. These men did not live free from suffering, but they mastered their perceptions of it. They understood that suffering is not an affliction, but an opportunity, a proving ground for character. As we begin to reshape our understanding of sadness, we must practice daily reflection. Each night, take a moment to review your thoughts and emotions. Ask yourself, did I let sadness control me today, or did I use it to sharpen my perspective? The answer may not always be what you hope for, but consistency is key. Every day is another chance to refine our philosophy, to fortify our minds against the storms of existence. This is the first step in rising above sadness, recognizing that it is not an invincible force, but a state of mind that can be redefined, transformed, and ultimately conquered. With patience and dedication, we can turn sadness into an ally, a silent teacher that shapes us into something greater than we ever imagined possible. Each time you feel sadness creeping in, ask yourself, what am I believing about this situation that makes me feel this way? Then challenge that belief. Is it true? Is it the only way to interpret this moment? Chapter 2. Detaching from the source of sorrow. The Stoics taught that suffering is intensified when we attach ourselves too deeply to things beyond our control. Epictetus said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them." If a relationship ends, sadness arises not because of the breakup itself, but because of the meaning we assign to it. I will never find love again. I am not worthy. This was my only chance at happiness. These are interpretations, not truths. The Stoic approach is to separate ourselves from these illusions, to see them for what they are, mere narratives created by the mind, not objective realities. Consider someone learning a new language. At first, everything feels foreign: the words, the grammar, the pronunciation. They struggle to form sentences, making mistakes that seem frustrating and embarrassing. They might feel discouraged, thinking they will never be fluent. But instead of giving up, they continue practicing, embracing the errors as part of the process. Over time, what once seemed incomprehensible starts to make sense. They begin to recognize words, understand conversations, and eventually speak with confidence. The struggle that once felt overwhelming becomes a stepping stone to mastery. Likewise, when we suffer a loss, it is not the event itself that defines our emotional response, but how we interpret it. If we see hardships as unfair obstacles, we may succumb to despair. But if we treat them as opportunities to grow stronger, just as the language learner embraces mistakes and persistence, we develop the mental fortitude to rise above sadness. Every experience, no matter how painful, has the potential to shape us into wiser, more capable individuals. Imagine an artist faced with a blank canvas. At first, they may hesitate, unsure of where to begin. They might worry about making mistakes or choosing the wrong colors, but if they let go of their fear and start painting, the masterpiece takes shape one brushstroke at a time. Life operates in much the same way. If we remain paralyzed by sadness, afraid of the next step, we never progress. But when we embrace the process, including the missteps, we transform pain into personal growth. Likewise, when we suffer a loss, it is not the event itself that defines our emotional response, but how we interpret it. If we see hardships as unfair obstacles, we may succumb to despair. But if we treat them as opportunities to grow stronger, just as the student embraces the challenge of learning, we develop the mental fortitude to rise above sadness. Every experience, no matter how painful, has the potential to shape us into wiser, more capable individuals. The Stoics remind us that attachment to external things, relationships, wealth, reputation, sets us up for suffering. When we believe that our happiness depends on something outside of us, we give that thing power over our emotions. True freedom comes when we detach from external circumstances and find stability within ourselves. When we learn to stand firm in the face of loss, knowing that no external possession or relationship defines us, we gain an unshakable sense of self. To begin this practice, start by observing your thoughts. When sadness arises, ask yourself, what belief is fueling this emotion? Is it true? What would a Stoic say about this situation? By questioning our automatic reactions, we begin to break the chains of illusion that bind us to suffering. The more we practice this, the stronger our mental resilience becomes, allowing us to maintain control over our emotional responses rather than being controlled by them. Letting go of attachments does not mean we stop caring. It means we recognize that our well-being is not dependent on things we cannot control. Instead, we focus on what is within our power, our thoughts, our actions, and our responses to life's unpredictability. This is the foundation of inner peace and emotional resilience. When we adopt this mindset, we do not eliminate sadness from our lives, but we prevent it from ruling us. Instead of seeing pain as an enemy, we welcome it as a teacher, a force that shapes us into the strongest version of ourselves. List the things in your life that currently bring you sadness. Next to each one, write whether it is within your control or outside of it. Train yourself to detach from the things you cannot control and focus only on your own thoughts and actions. Chapter 3. Transforming Sorrow into Strength. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoics, saw adversity as a tool for growth. He wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." What if sadness was not a curse, but a lesson? Instead of resisting it, the Stoics would say to embrace it fully, but not in a way that lets it consume you. Rather, use it as fuel for wisdom and self-mastery. Every challenge we face, including sorrow, presents an opportunity to grow. To the Stoics, hardship is like a whetstone against which we sharpen our character. When we resist difficulties, we become brittle, but when we embrace them as teachers, we become unbreakable. The way we respond to sadness determines whether it weakens or strengthens us. Imagine someone learning to play an instrument. At first, every note feels awkward. Every attempt at playing a song is filled with mistakes, and frustration can easily take over. They might think they lack natural talent or that they'll never improve. But if they push through the struggle, practicing with patience and persistence, their skills refine over time. The very obstacles that once seemed overwhelming become the stepping stones to mastery. Similarly, sadness is not a punishment. It is a challenge that, if handled correctly, makes us stronger. This is why the Stoics remind us that adversity is not something to be avoided, but welcomed. Seneca also said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." We must learn to view our sorrow as that friction, as the necessary resistance that carves away our weakness and reveals the strength beneath. Just as a sculptor sees a masterpiece hidden within a rough block of stone, our suffering holds the potential to refine and shape us into the strongest versions of ourselves. So when sadness comes, do not ask, "Why must I suffer?" but rather, "What strength is this teaching me?" The moment we change our perspective, sadness loses its grip, and we take our first steps toward mastering it. Instead of dreading emotional pain, we can begin to see it as a guide, pushing us toward personal evolution. Sadness, when examined closely, often highlights the areas of life where we still have room to grow, helping us identify weaknesses in our thinking, our attachments, and our expectations. By training ourselves to see sadness as an opportunity, we remove its power to hold us down. We replace helplessness with purpose, shifting from passive suffering to active self-improvement. This requires a shift in mindset, one that does not see adversity as something to be feared, but as a necessary part of personal evolution. When sadness arrives, we should not retreat into despair, but recognize it as a signal, a call to action, pushing us towards self-awareness and strength. The result? A mind that can withstand the storm of emotions without being carried away by them, emerging not only unscathed, but fortified for future challenges. A person who no longer sees sadness as a burden, but as a teacher shaping their inner resilience. Instead of being paralyzed by sorrow, they move forward with wisdom, using every painful experience to refine their character. This transformation does not happen instantly. It requires practice, reflection, and discipline. But each step we take toward mastering our emotions brings us closer to a state of true freedom, where sadness is no longer an anchor, but a stepping stone to a higher state of being. The stronger we become, the less control sadness has over us. And when we finally understand this, we realize that rising above sadness is not just possible. It is inevitable for those who are willing to do the work. When you feel sadness, ask yourself, what can I learn from this pain? How can this suffering make me stronger, wiser, or more disciplined? Then, write your answers down. Over time, you will see patterns emerge, lessons hidden within your sorrow, waiting to be discovered. Chapter 4. Training your mind for emotional stability. Just as an athlete trains their body, a Stoic trains their mind. If you want to rise above sadness permanently, you must cultivate a fortress of resilience within your thoughts. This requires daily discipline, intentional self-awareness, and an unwavering commitment to mastering your emotions. Just as a body weakens when neglected, the mind too can deteriorate if we allow negative emotions to run unchecked. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Reject your sense of injury, and the injury itself disappears." If you reject the belief that sadness controls you, it loses its power. This means refusing to indulge in self-pity, refusing to let external circumstances dictate your emotional state, and refusing to let past wounds define your future. Instead, you shift your focus to what you can control: your thoughts, your perceptions, and your actions. A Stoic does not wait for sadness to subside on its own. Instead, They actively engage with their emotions, dissecting their origins and questioning their validity. Is this sadness justified, or is it merely a habit of thought, conditioned over time? The Stoic approach is not to suppress emotions, but to understand them fully, observing them from a place of logic rather than letting them take control. A skilled philosopher treats sadness as a visitor, not a master, examining its intentions and learning from its presence rather than succumbing to it. Training the mind means preparing for life's inevitable challenges before they arise. Just as an athlete strengthens their muscles before competition, a Stoic fortifies their mind before adversity strikes. This is done through deliberate reflection, daily affirmations of strength, and an ongoing commitment to perceiving life through the lens of wisdom rather than impulse. A soldier does not wait for battle to train. They sharpen their skills long before the war begins. In the same way, a Stoic strengthens their mental fortitude not when difficulties arise, but well before, ensuring that when hardship knocks, they meet it with an unshakable mindset. Mental discipline is built through small, daily victories. Instead of waiting for extreme sadness to force you into action, cultivate resilience in everyday moments. This means recognizing that even minor struggles, traffic delays, an unexpected bill, a disagreement with a colleague, are opportunities to test your emotional strength. Rather than seeing these as nuisances, view them as small trials, training you for the larger obstacles life may throw your way. When minor inconveniences occur, pause before reacting. Breathe. Observe how your mind instinctively wants to respond. Does frustration rise? Does irritation take hold? Instead of reacting impulsively, use these moments as a mental exercise in patience and self-control. Over time, these small victories accumulate, strengthening your ability to remain composed in the face of greater challenges. Imagine a tree standing in the midst of a storm. If it has deep roots, it bends with the wind, but does not break. If it is weak and shallow, the first strong gust can uproot it completely. Your resilience functions in the same way. If you consistently practice control over the small, everyday disturbances, then when true adversity strikes, a loss, a heartbreak, a major failure, you will not be easily shaken. Instead, you will bend, adjust, and remain standing. Stoicism teaches that the true test of emotional stability is not how we feel in moments of comfort, but how we respond under pressure. The more we train ourselves to face setbacks with grace, the more sadness loses its hold over us. Each difficulty faced with wisdom is another brick in the fortress of our resilience. By consistently challenging yourself to master small frustrations, you build the strength to confront life's greatest trials with the unshakable mindset of a true Stoic. Each morning, prepare yourself for potential hardships. Remind yourself that nothing external can shake you unless you allow it to. Visualize yourself encountering difficulties with composure, handling setbacks with grace, and responding to challenges with wisdom. Throughout the day, when you experience frustration or sadness, pause and observe your reaction. Ask yourself, am I in control, or am I letting circumstances dictate my emotions? The more you practice, the stronger your mind becomes. Build a mindset that is unshakable in the face of emotional turmoil, and over time, sadness will lose its grip on you. Chapter 5. The Power of Present Focus. Many forms of sadness come from either dwelling on the past or fearing the future. The Stoics taught the importance of focusing only on the present moment, reminding us that neither the past nor the future exists in reality. They are only thoughts in our minds. The past is an echo, something that cannot be changed, while the future is merely a possibility, shaped by our actions in the present. When we dwell on past mistakes, we replay suffering that no longer exists. When we anxiously anticipate the future, we burden ourselves with troubles that have not yet come to pass. In both cases, we create suffering that exists only in our minds. Epictetus advised, "Do not seek to have events happen as you want them to, but instead want them to happen as they do, and your life will go well." This means surrendering our resistance to what is beyond our control and instead embracing what is unfolding before us. By anchoring ourselves in the now, we strip sadness of its power. When we spend too much time replaying past regrets or worrying about uncertainties, we invite unnecessary suffering. But if we redirect our focus to what is within our immediate reach, our actions, our breath, our current reality, we regain control over our emotions. Imagine a person walking through a beautiful garden, but constantly looking behind them, regretting the steps they have already taken. They lament the flowers they missed or the paths they should have chosen. At the same time, they worry about what lies ahead, stressing over which way to turn and what they might encounter. Meanwhile, they fail to notice the beauty surrounding them in the present moment. This is how many of us live, trapped between regret and anxiety, missing the richness of life as it unfolds. Think about a river. If you fight against the current, struggling to go in a direction it does not allow, you will exhaust yourself and likely drown. But if you move with the river, allowing it to guide you while adjusting your strokes to maintain control, you stay afloat and make progress. Life functions in the same way. When we fight against reality, wishing things were different, longing for the past, fearing the unknown, we create our own suffering. But when we embrace what is, adapting to each moment with clarity and intention, we free ourselves from unnecessary sorrow. One of the greatest misunderstandings about living in the present is the idea that it means ignoring the past or future entirely. This is not what the Stoics taught. They recognized the value of learning from the past and preparing for the future, but they warned against allowing either to dominate our emotional state. The goal is to use past experiences as lessons and future concerns as guides while maintaining complete engagement with the present moment. A Stoic acknowledges what has been and what may come, but lives fully in what is happening now. Practice presence by using mindfulness techniques. Whenever you feel overwhelmed by sadness, take a moment to notice your breath, your surroundings, and the sensations in your body. Ask yourself, am I mentally living in the past or the future right now? How can I fully engage with this present moment? Ground yourself in the now and observe how peace replaces distress when you choose to exist fully in the present. Additionally, set a reminder throughout your day to pause and check in with yourself. Ask, what am I focusing on right now? Is it something I can control? With time and practice, you will strengthen your ability to return to the present, where true peace resides. Chapter 6. The Impermanence of Emotions. One of the greatest misconceptions about emotions is that they are fixed states. People believe that if they feel sadness today, they will always feel sad. The same goes for happiness or immense joy and elation. No emotions last forever, whether they are good or bad emotions. The Stoics teach us that emotions are impermanent. Just as no storm lasts forever, no feeling, no matter how intense, can remain unchanged. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, everything is ephemeral, both that which remembers and that which is remembered. This means that even the pain that feels unbearable in the moment will eventually pass. When we remind ourselves of this truth, we lessen the grip sadness has on us. Consider the sky. Sometimes it is filled with dark clouds and heavy rain. Other times it is clear and peaceful. But the sky itself is never altered by the weather. It simply holds space for whatever comes. Our minds work the same way. Emotions, like clouds, pass through us. They are temporary visitors, not permanent residents. The sky does not cling to storms, nor does it try to trap the sunshine. It simply allows them to come and go. This is how we should view our emotions, passing states that visit but never stay forever. To extend this idea further, imagine a river flowing through a landscape. Sometimes the waters are calm, reflecting the beauty of the trees and sky. Other times the river swells with rain, becoming turbulent and wild. But no matter the conditions, the river continues to move forward. It never stops. It never remains in one state forever. Emotions behave the same way. They move through us, shaping our experiences, but never truly defining who we are. If we try to fight against them or cling to them, we only cause unnecessary suffering. But if we accept their flow, we gain peace. Another way to understand this is to think about music. A single note played in isolation does not make a song. It is part of a melody that rises and falls, weaving together a complex and beautiful composition. Emotions work in the same way. A moment of sadness is just one note in the greater composition of our lives. If we fixate on that one note, we lose sight of the beauty of the entire song. But when we embrace the ebb and flow, we appreciate each moment for what it is, a passing part of a much larger experience, one that contributes to our growth and understanding. Music is dynamic, shifting from one key to another, building tension and then resolving it. It moves through highs and lows, just as our emotions do. A piece of music without variation would be monotonous and lifeless. In the same way, a life without a range of emotions would lack depth and meaning. We must learn to experience emotions as we experience music, fully yet without attachment. When we hear a sad song, we do not try to resist it. We allow ourselves to feel its emotion, knowing that the next song will bring a different mood. Life, too, has its movements, and no one moment defines the entire composition. Understanding this transience allows us to detach from overwhelming emotions. Rather than fearing sadness or clinging to joy, we learn to let them come and go without resistance. This is the essence of Stoic wisdom, recognizing that our inner peace does not depend on eliminating emotions, but on observing them without attachment. When we stop seeing sadness as something to escape from, we gain the power to coexist with it, knowing that it too will fade like everything else. Imagine an orchestra performing a masterpiece. If one instrument plays too loudly or a musician tries to sustain a note indefinitely, the harmony is disrupted. Our emotions work the same way. When we cling to a single feeling, whether joy or sorrow, we create imbalance. The key is to allow each emotion to have its time, to play its part, and then let it go as the next movement begins. A person who understands the impermanence of emotions does not become consumed by despair when sadness arrives, nor do they desperately try to hold on to happiness when it begins to fade. They simply accept each emotion as part of the ebb and flow of life, knowing that nothing remains unchanged. They do not resist, nor do they cling. They simply live in harmony with whatever comes, unshaken by the temporary storms of the mind. By adopting this perspective, we gain the ability to navigate life's symphony with grace, allowing every note, whether joyful or sorrowful, to contribute to the masterpiece that is our existence. When sadness arises, visualize it as a passing cloud or a river's current moving past you. Observe it without judgment, without panic, and without the urge to cling or resist. Imagine it as a note in a song, just one part of a greater whole. Remind yourself that this feeling will not last forever. This practice of emotional detachment will help you regain control over your mind and prevent sadness from consuming you. Over time, you will begin to see emotions as transient rather than overwhelming forces controlling your life. As you practice this daily, you will cultivate a mindset that welcomes change instead of fearing it, leading to greater inner peace and resilience. Chapter 7. Taking Action to Reclaim Your Power. The Stoics believed that action is the antidote to suffering. If sadness keeps you in a state of inaction, the way forward is to move, literally and metaphorically. They taught that we should not dwell too long on our emotions, but instead focus on what is within our power. Too often, people wait for motivation to strike before taking action, but the Stoics understood that action itself generates momentum. When you act, even in small ways, you disrupt the cycle of sadness and create space for clarity and strength. Epictetus advised, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." If sadness makes you feel powerless, take action to reclaim your sense of agency. This does not mean waiting until you feel better. It means doing something even while you feel sad. Action does not require motivation. It requires discipline. Small steps, taken consistently, will begin to lift the fog of sadness and bring you back into engagement with life. Movement is key, both physically and mentally. Exercise, engage in meaningful work, connect with others, or create something valuable. The more you engage with life, the less space sadness has to control you. Physical movement, like going for a walk or practicing deep breathing, signals to the brain that you are not trapped. Taking action externally creates a shift internally. Even the smallest accomplishment, a completed task, a moment of kindness, a step toward a goal, begins to rewire your mind toward resilience. Imagine a stagnant pond versus a flowing river. The pond, still and motionless, accumulates algae, becoming murky over time. The river, always moving, remains fresh and clear. Your mind functions in the same way. Stagnation breeds heaviness, while movement keeps you energized and capable of adapting to life's challenges. When sadness threatens to immobilize you, remember that the act of moving forward, even in the smallest way, restores your power. To reinforce this principle, consider the difference between a person stuck in quicksand and one climbing a mountain. The person in quicksand panics and remains still, sinking deeper the more they resist. However, the climber moves, adjusting their steps, even if the path is steep. Though difficult, each movement brings them closer to the peak. The lesson: inaction deepens suffering, while movement, even when challenging, creates progress. The Stoics understood that stagnation leads to emotional decay, whereas action reignites the mind's ability to engage with life. Taking a single step forward is like lighting a torch in a dark cave. Each step illuminates more of the path ahead. In moments of deep sadness, it is crucial to start small. A single step forward, a task completed, a phone call made, a book read, creates momentum. Action fuels more action. Once you take that first step, the second becomes easier, and soon you begin to see yourself not as someone drowning in sadness, but as someone steadily navigating through it. You reclaim control over your emotions rather than letting them dictate your state of mind. Momentum is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. Just as a heavy boulder requires significant effort to push at first, but moves more easily once in motion, the mind also resists change initially, but becomes more adaptable once action begins. The greatest hurdle is not the action itself, but overcoming the inertia of sadness and inaction. The moment you choose movement, no matter how small, you begin to break free from its hold. Imagine a candle in a dimly lit room. It does not instantly flood the space with light, but with each flicker, the darkness recedes. Small actions work in the same way. They may not immediately erase sadness, but each effort weakens its grip. With consistency, even the heaviest sorrow begins to lift, revealing clarity and purpose beneath it. Each time sadness threatens to immobilize you, take one small action. Go for a walk, write down your thoughts, complete a task, or help someone else. These small steps accumulate into a powerful shift in mindset. Reflect on a moment when action helped you overcome emotional heaviness, and remind yourself that forward movement is always within your control. As an added exercise, track your daily actions for a week. Write down each moment where you chose action over inaction, no matter how minor. At the end of the week, review your progress. This exercise reinforces the idea that movement, no matter how small, builds an unstoppable force of resilience. Chapter 8. The Role of Gratitude in Stoicism. Gratitude is a fundamental Stoic practice because it redirects the mind from what is lacking to what is present. When we focus on what we have instead of what we have lost, we weaken sadness' hold over us. The Stoics understood that much of our suffering comes from unfulfilled desires, constantly reaching for things we do not yet have, rather than appreciating the abundance already within our grasp. Seneca stated, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." This means that contentment is not found in acquiring more, but in appreciating what already exists. True wealth, in the Stoic sense, is the ability to find joy and satisfaction in simplicity. A person who constantly seeks external validation or material gain will never feel fulfilled because their happiness is always just out of reach. On the other hand, someone who embraces gratitude sees value in even the smallest things. A warm conversation, a sunrise, a lesson learned from hardship. Practicing gratitude does not mean ignoring pain or pretending everything is perfect. It means choosing to direct your focus toward what is good, even in difficult times. The Stoics remind us that while we cannot always control our circumstances, we can control our perspective. When we learn to appreciate what we have, rather than lament what we lack, we transform our entire experience of life. Gratitude allows us to shift from a mindset of scarcity to one of abundance. Instead of constantly feeling as if something is missing, we begin to recognize the many gifts we already possess. Every day presents small blessings that are easy to overlook. A kind word from a friend, the warmth of the sun on our face, the simple pleasure of a deep breath. By training ourselves to acknowledge these moments, we cultivate a sense of inner peace that is not dependent on external conditions. A powerful way to practice gratitude is to reframe challenges as opportunities for growth. When facing hardship, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" a Stoic asks, "What can I learn from this?" This subtle shift in thinking removes us from a victim mentality and places us in a position of strength. Every difficulty becomes a lesson, every setback a chance to build resilience. Another effective practice is expressing gratitude outwardly. When we take time to acknowledge others, whether by thanking a friend, writing a note of appreciation, or simply offering a kind word, we deepen our connections and remind ourselves of the positive aspects of life. This outward practice strengthens our internal mindset, reinforcing the habit of gratitude and making it a natural part of our daily experience. At the end of each day, write down 3 things you are grateful for. Go beyond the obvious and challenge yourself to find gratitude even in challenges. Ask yourself, what did I gain from today that I might have otherwise taken for granted? Over time, this practice rewires your brain to focus on abundance rather than lack, helping you cultivate a sense of peace and fulfillment that remains steady regardless of external circumstances. Chapter 9. The Strength Found in Acceptance. One of the most powerful Stoic lessons is amor fati, the love of fate. This philosophy teaches us to not only accept what happens, but to embrace it as necessary for our growth. When we resist reality, we suffer. But when we accept it fully, we gain strength, clarity, and the ability to shape our perspective rather than be controlled by external circumstances. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart. True resilience is not just tolerating what happens, but welcoming it as part of our personal journey. To love one's fate does not mean passively resigning to life's hardships. Rather, it means actively seeking value in every experience, good or bad. It is the realization that every challenge, setback, and loss contributes to the forging of a stronger character and a more refined soul. Imagine a blacksmith forging a sword. The metal must be subjected to intense heat, beaten and shaped repeatedly before it becomes a weapon of great strength. If the metal had consciousness, it might perceive the process as suffering. But the blacksmith sees the bigger picture, the potential within the raw material. In the same way, Amor Fati urges us to recognize that life's trials shape us into something greater than we were before. To extend this metaphor, consider how pressure forms diamonds from coal. Without immense heat and pressure over time, coal remains ordinary, fragile, and unremarkable. But through the right process, it transforms into something brilliant and unbreakable. Likewise, when we embrace life's difficulties instead of resisting them, we undergo a similar transformation. We become tougher, more resilient, and more capable of withstanding future trials. Hardships are not merely things to endure. They are the very forces that carve out the depth of our character. This perspective allows us to move beyond frustration and resistance. Instead of wishing things were different, we find ways to use them to our advantage. A rejection, a failure, an unexpected hardship. Each of these can become a catalyst for wisdom, patience, and fortitude. When we truly love our fate, we turn obstacles into stepping stones, allowing each experience to refine and strengthen us. The Stoics believed that nothing in life is inherently good or bad. Only our perception makes it so. A loss can be seen as devastation, or it can be seen as a new beginning. A failure can be perceived as humiliation, or it can be viewed as an opportunity for growth. When we embrace Amor Fati, we stop labeling events as curses or blessings and begin to accept them as necessary parts of our unique journey. To love one's fate is not just about surviving hardship, it is about thriving because of it. When we shift our mindset from resistance to acceptance, we unlock a deep sense of freedom. No longer burdened by the illusion of control, we learn to flow with life rather than fight against it. We begin to see that every difficulty, every loss, every painful experience is not a roadblock, but a stepping stone to something greater. With this acceptance comes an inner peace that no external circumstance can shake. When we embrace Amor Fati, we no longer see ourselves as victims of fate, but as active participants in our own growth. We develop an unshakable mindset, one that allows us to take whatever life throws our way and turn it into something valuable. This shift is not just philosophical, it is transformational. It means that even in our lowest moments, we can find strength, knowing that nothing is wasted. Every challenge refines us, every setback teaches us, and every hardship builds a deeper well of resilience within us. To fully embody this mindset, we must practice it daily. We must remind ourselves that life is not meant to be easy, but it is meant to shape us into our strongest selves. Each hardship is like a sculptor's chisel, carving away weakness, revealing the refined form beneath. We must embrace every moment, the joyous and the painful, as essential elements in our own refinement. When difficulties arise, we can choose to resist and suffer, or we can choose to accept and grow. Resistance is the path of stagnation. It traps us in cycles of frustration, making us feel like victims of fate. Acceptance, on the other hand, is the path of liberation. It allows us to take control of how we respond to challenges, transforming suffering into wisdom and setbacks into stepping stones. And when we truly master this, we become unstoppable, not because life no longer presents challenges, but because we have developed the wisdom to turn those challenges into fuel for our greatness. The fire that once threatened to consume us instead becomes the force that forges us into something unbreakable. This is the power of embracing life as it comes, knowing that every experience, no matter how painful, is shaping us into something stronger, wiser, and ultimately freer. Each time you encounter hardship, say to yourself, "This too is part of my path." Remind yourself that every trial is not an obstacle, but an opportunity in disguise. Consider the way nature embraces adversity. The tree that grows stronger against the wind, the river that carves its way through mountains over time. Hardship is not a roadblock, it is the chisel that shapes you. Take a moment to reflect on how even the most difficult experiences have contributed to your personal growth. Think about times when you have endured loss, failure, or struggle. How did those moments refine you? What strength did they reveal within you that you might not have discovered otherwise? Journal about a past challenge that ultimately led to positive change in your life. Write not just about the hardship itself, but about the lessons, the resilience, and the unexpected gifts that came from it. To deepen this exercise, consider how your current struggles might one day serve a greater purpose. Imagine yourself in the future, looking back on today's difficulties with the wisdom of experience. How might this moment of pain be a stepping stone to something greater? By shifting your perspective, you will begin to see life's hardships not as curses, but as necessary parts of your transformation, forging you into someone wiser, stronger, and more unshakable than before. Chapter 10. The Final Step: Becoming Unshakable. The ultimate goal of Stoicism is not to eliminate emotions, but to master them. A true Stoic is not emotionless. They simply do not let emotions dictate their lives. By understanding sadness, detaching from unnecessary suffering, and taking action to reclaim inner strength, you build an unshakable mind. You develop the ability to acknowledge emotions without being consumed by them, to feel deeply while remaining in control, and to face adversity with a sense of unwavering steadiness. Marcus Aurelius declared, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is the foundation of true resilience, the ability to recognize that while we cannot control what happens to us, we can always control how we respond. This realization is liberating. It means that no matter how chaotic the external world becomes, the inner world remains within our command. When we understand this, we cease to be at the mercy of circumstances. Instead, we become architects of our own mental state, crafting an inner fortress that no storm can destroy. Imagine being stuck in heavy traffic on your way to work or an important meeting. Cars honk, drivers yell, and frustration builds all around you. But in the midst of the chaos, you take a deep breath. You realize that no amount of anger or impatience will change the situation. Instead of letting the traffic dictate your emotions, you remain calm, focused, and in control. This is the mindset of a Stoic, not allowing external turbulence to disrupt your inner peace. This is the mental discipline of a true Stoic, the ability to remain steady while everything around you shifts. This level of control is not granted at birth. It is built through practice, repetition, and an unrelenting commitment to self-mastery. When you develop this skill, you carry with you a sense of certainty, knowing that no hardship can overpower the strength you have cultivated within yourself. When you internalize this, nothing can break you. You become resilient, not because life is easy, but because you have learned to master yourself. Hardships no longer shake you to your core. Instead, they become opportunities for growth. You no longer fear sadness, but welcome it as a teacher. You do not crumble under pressure, but adapt and rise above it. Every challenge sharpens your mind, strengthens your will, and refines your character, ensuring that with each battle, you emerge stronger than before. Resilience is not about avoiding struggle, but about meeting it with an unbreakable will. Think about a boxer in a fight, not one who wins easily, but one who takes every punch, stumbles, and still gets back up. The true test is not whether they fall, but whether they rise again. Life's hardships are the punches, and your response determines whether you stay down or stand taller with every round. This is the mindset of a Stoic: to face adversity head-on, absorb its lessons, and emerge stronger than before. True mastery of the mind is not about being unfeeling. It is about being unshakable in the face of life's inevitable storms. It is not about eliminating struggle, but learning to thrive within it. It is not about denying sadness, but transforming it into a source of strength. When you master yourself, you become like a fire that is not extinguished by the wind, but fueled by it. Each hardship, rather than weakening you, feeds your inner fire, making it burn even brighter. Every challenge becomes another log thrown into the flames, strengthening and refining you. This is the final step in becoming truly free, understanding that while external forces may shift and change, your inner foundation remains solid, unwavering, and unbreakable. No longer do you live at the mercy of circumstances, but rather you become the master of your fate. You are not just surviving, you are thriving, fortified by every challenge and prepared for anything that life may bring. You develop a mindset that views difficulty not as something to fear, but as something to embrace, a necessary part of your evolution. Hardships are an inevitable part of life, but they do not define us. They refine us. Each challenge we face is not an interruption to our journey, but an essential part of it. Pain, difficulty, and setbacks are not indicators of failure, but necessary experiences that help us grow. Just as pressure turns coal into diamonds and heat strengthens metal, adversity shapes us into stronger, wiser individuals. The most profound personal growth does not come from comfort, but from trials that test our endurance and force us to rise beyond our perceived limitations. Struggle is not a sign of weakness, but proof of transformation in progress. Rather than seeing difficulties as barriers, we must recognize them as opportunities for transformation. Hardships are not roadblocks, they are stepping stones leading us to greater resilience. Every time we resist hardship, we prolong our suffering. However, when we accept and work through our struggles, we cultivate endurance. Growth does not emerge from ease, but from the willingness to persist through discomfort. Every challenge sharpens our mental and emotional strength, allowing us to rise above sadness rather than be consumed by it. Embracing this perspective allows us to take full control of our own narrative. Instead of viewing ourselves as victims of circumstance, we become active participants in shaping our lives. External events may be unpredictable, but our response remains firmly within our control. The trials of today will become the strengths of tomorrow, molding us into individuals capable of withstanding anything that life may bring. No setback is final, and no hardship is without purpose. Resilience is not about avoiding hardship, but about understanding that no hardship has the power to break us unless we allow it. The moment we shift our mindset, we no longer dread the future, fearing what difficulties may come. Instead, we stand ready, knowing that no matter what arises, we possess the strength, the discipline, and the wisdom to endure and emerge even stronger. The core of Stoicism is not about erasing struggle, it is about mastering ourselves in the face of it. The ultimate lesson in resilience is this: True freedom does not come from a life without challenges, but from the ability to move through them unshaken. This shift in perspective is what grants us peace. When we recognize that struggle is the forge that tempers our strength, we begin to welcome it rather than fear it. The difficulties we once viewed as burdens become tools of refinement, ensuring that we rise above sadness with wisdom, discipline, and unwavering inner strength. Adversity, rather than being something to escape, becomes the very foundation upon which we build our greatest personal growth. The more we endure, the more we develop patience, fortitude, and a deep understanding of ourselves. Hardship is no longer an obstacle. It becomes the weight that strengthens us, the chisel that carves away weakness, the fire that forges our unshakable core. When we embrace this perspective, we no longer see struggle as an unfair burden, but as an essential part of life's design, meant to elevate us to a higher state of resilience and wisdom. With this mindset, even sadness transforms into a teacher. Instead of resisting it, we analyze it, seek the lessons within it, and use it as fuel for our growth. We begin to see that sadness is not a signal of our downfall, but a calling to rebuild ourselves stronger than before. When we stop allowing emotions to dictate our actions and instead use them as signals to guide our growth, we break free from the chains of suffering and step into a state of true emotional mastery. In this way, true resilience is not merely the ability to withstand hardship, but the ability to transform it into an advantage. The mind, once disciplined in this way, no longer seeks to avoid discomfort. It learns to embrace it as an opportunity for expansion. By fully embodying this wisdom, we achieve a kind of freedom that no external circumstance can shake. The path of the Stoic is not about eradicating sadness, but about transcending it, becoming so strong in mind and spirit that it can never again hold power over us. Reflect on your journey with intention. Write down the key insights you have learned about yourself, sadness, and the way you respond to challenges. Consider how sadness has shaped your perception, how you have navigated through difficult emotions, and what lessons have emerged from these experiences. Document moments where you successfully reframed suffering into growth, instances where resilience overpowered despair, and times when you exercised control over your thoughts rather than allowing them to control you. Acknowledge how far you have come, not just in overcoming sadness, but in strengthening your mind, refining your perspective, and building emotional endurance. Recognize the discipline it takes to break free from destructive patterns and the courage it requires to confront pain rather than avoid it. Remind yourself that progress is not always linear, but each step, no matter how small, contributes to your evolution. Commit to continuing your Stoic path by developing a personal philosophy of emotional mastery. Establish habits that reinforce resilience, such as daily reflection, mindful detachment, and intentional action in the face of adversity. Strengthen your mental framework so that sadness, when it comes, is not a force that controls you, but an experience that refines you. The more you practice these principles, the stronger you will become, until sadness is no longer an enemy, but a guide that leads you to wisdom, self-awareness, and an unwavering sense of inner peace. By applying these lessons, you have taken the first steps toward breaking free from the cycle of sadness. Stoicism does not promise a life without hardship, but it offers the tools to rise above suffering. Through perspective, discipline, and action, you reclaim your power and transform sadness into strength. Sadness is no longer something that controls you. It is something you observe, learn from, and rise above. You have become the master of your emotions, and with continued practice, nothing will have the power to shake you. This is how you rise high above your sadness, now and forever.